And in the dream, I knew that he was going on ahead. He's fixing to make a fire somewhere out there, and all that dark, and all that cold.
The Coen Brothers' 2007 film, No Country for Old Men, is not your typical Western. The hero doesn't win or even survive. The villain gets away, and the ending isn't a shootout, but rather a slow, calm monologue by a character who is the least involved of the three main characters. Sheriff Bell tells his wife about his dreams.
I knew that whenever I got there, he'd be there. And then I woke up.
And then we abruptly cut to black. So what gives? After focusing so much on Moss escaping Chigurh, does it really make sense for the story to leave the audience with a seemingly peripheral character's enigmatic breakfast conversation? Yes, because the final scene gives us a window into the movie's deeper meaning and the Coens' pessimistic worldview, we realize that Bell is one of the old men of the title, and we get a glimpse into why there's no country for them anymore. Waking up, he struggles to face the actual world of chaos and randomness, and so he's lost. The Coens use the dreams to show Bell mourning the decent, lawful world he believes in, which probably never even existed, but has been an illusion or a dream all along. The Coens' ending is both pessimistic and opaque. On one hand, Moss's end tells us that our past sins catch up with us. Even if he repents, like with Marion Crane in Psycho, the movie will execute his punishment. Yet, on the other hand, the story rejects justice when Chigurh escapes, as if his outcome has been determined by one of his own coin tosses. We're left with a frightening interplay of the arbitrary and the inevitable, in which we must fear both moral punishment and the total lack of moral order, yet can't trust in either. So, let's dig into the meaning of the dreams.
How'd you sleep?
I don't know. Had dreams.
Well, you got time for 'em now. Anything interesting?
There always is to the party concerned.
In the film, Sheriff Bell is hesitant at first to share them with his own wife, since he doesn't think his wife would find them engaging. A hint to the audience, since the wife, in the cinematic adaptation, stands in for the reader of Cormac McCarthy's book, Us. The choice to end with dreams can even be read as a tongue-in-cheek joke, since it's well known that most people find hearing others' dreams boring. So this is hardly the dramatic ending that an average movie audience might be chasing. But it's also not uncharacteristic for the Coens.
Intruder! Stop!
Wait a minute. Where is the treasury guy? Farrer?
Right now?
Bell says,
Two of them both had my father in them. It's peculiar. I'm older now than he ever was by 20 years.
something's off, and time has been inverted. Because Bell is now older than his father, he is the old man. Bell represents a character displaced from an old Western. The older ideas of law enforcement, or simple dualities and causalities, no longer seem to apply. This world has become too dangerous, too wild, and Bell retires because of it, defeated by this new world and its ambiguity. His first dream is about how his father gives him some money.
He gave me some money. I think I lost it.
The bulk of the film has been about the struggle between Moss and Chigurh to get a case with $2 million. All of the characters who are concerned with the money end up dead or injured or morally empty, while Bell survives and stays intact long enough to retire. This first dream leaves us with the sense that greed eventually leads people to fall, and that those who don't place importance on money live a safer and fuller life. But money in dreams also tends to symbolize success, thriving, or good fortune. Bell's losing the money evokes his loss of this world, which baffles him and seems to have no use for him anymore.
I feel overmatched.
In these final moments, Bell has another chance to understand recent events, but his losing the money also symbolizes his inability to see the world clearly. He's out of touch, not just because the world's moved on, but also because it never was what he thought it was.
But I don't want to push my chips forward and go out and meet something I don't understand. A man would have to put his soul at hazard.
The second dream is about riding on horseback through the mountains, getting as far away from civilization as possible.
And I was a horseback, going through the mountains of the night, going through this pass in the mountains.
Sheriff Bell's monologue at the beginning of the film reminisces about older times, when some of the old-time sheriffs never carried a gun.
I always like to hear about the old-timers. Never missed a chance to do so.
Bell is filled with nostalgia for a safer, straightforward time where he imagines every crime made sense and every criminal got put away, much like the plot of a typical Western. There's a reference to going back in time when Bell says,
When he rode past, I seen he was carrying fire and a horn, the way people used to do, and I could see the horn from the light inside of it, about the color of the moon.
this isn't a torch meant to provide light, but a primitive way of starting fires by carrying hot embers from one campsite to the next, so that there's no need for flint or a match. It's carrying the promise of a fire up ahead. The life that Bell is living now is represented by this cold mountainous path, full of moral uncertainty and darkness. But by carrying forward this fire, he feels he's continuing his father's essence, and somehow this will enable a return to that simpler good his father represents. Yet, this dream appears not to be a prophecy, but simply a desire. He tells his wife,
I knew that whenever I got there, he'd be there.
he needs the certainty that, in the end, there will be warmth and light. But he's dreaming about something that can never come true, and deep down, he knows it. The sudden cut to black seems to confirm this. The only answer is nothing. No country can be called a neo-Western. The neo-Western builds on recognizable Western imagery to reach a very different conclusion and worldview. Classic visual and story cues tell the audience that this should be a Western. The desert setting, the clearly defined heroes and villains, guns, drugs, a chase after money, and Stetson hats. All superficial signs would point to an ending where the hero prevails, takes a big bag of money, and rides off into the desert sun.
Running that mouth of yours, I'm gonna take you in the back and screw you.
Big talk.
Instead, No Country's hero, Llewellyn Moss, played by Josh Brolin, is killed by a third party. Moreover, he's far from a clear-cut hero.
Then I ask you again, how you come to be out here with no clothes?
I got an overcoat on.
Are you jacking with me?
Oh, no, sir.
Don't jack with me.
Yes, sir.
He's a thief. The first major action we witness from him is stealing money. Sheriff Bell assumes that Moss is the good guy because he's pitted against Chigurh, the clear villain. But this doesn't automatically make him righteous. Moss's sudden death is also indicative of a film noir plot. If the Western's traditional hero triumphs over unbelievable odds, the noir's hero, who's also smart and well-intentioned, if more flawed than a Western hero, can't overcome those odds.
Forget it, Jake. It's Chinatown.
The remorseless villain Anton Chigurh, played by Javier Bardem, is likewise less straightforward than the bad guys of old.
Call it.
Call it.
Yes.
For what?
Just call it.
Well, we need to know what we're calling it for here.
You need to call it. I can't call it for you. Well, it wouldn't be fair.
With his coin toss game of death, he intentionally models himself as a force of random destruction.
Call it.
The coin don't have no say. It's just you.
I got here the same way the coin did.
Chigurh's actions stem from a worldview which has logical integrity, whether or not it represents truth.
You going to shoot me?
That depends. Do you see me?
As the carrier of this coin, he believes in reminding people that their lives are ultimately subject to forces, whether they're God or death or chance, that are out of their control. A villain with purely selfish motives can be defeated and forgotten about in a classic Western shootout. But how do you defeat an idea?
If the rule you followed, Brudget is, of what use was the rule?
In the end, far from being brought to justice, Chigurh is injured by a car accident and then just barely gets away. He acts as the personification of the seeming haphazardness of the world the Coens give us, which doesn't care about our notions of right and wrong, of fair and unfair. This world has its own unknowable plans for us, or maybe no plan at all. Sheriff Bell survives and outlasts by remaining on the sidelines of the action, and he follows the footsteps of Moss and Chigurh, always a step behind. His mediocre triumph, in the end, is merely to stay out of evil's path, and thus he too is a disappointing shadow of the true Western's justice-seeking sheriff. In this scene, Bell sits in the same spot as Chigurh, looking at himself reflected in the TV screen, as if about to step into Chigurh's shoes and imagine his mindset. But instead, he merely says Chigurh's actions have left an impression on him, as if he's not a sheriff at all, but merely an observer.
He's seen the same things I've seen, and it certainly made an impression on me.
The final cut to black also recalls these reflections in the black TV screen, putting us in the same seat as Chigurh and Bell. We're given the choice to dream of an unattainable, just world, or wake up and see the terrifying randomness of reality. The movie's themes and structure result largely from how closely the film follows Cormac McCarthy's novel.
There's this boy I sent to the electric chair at Huntsville here a while back. My arrest and my testimony.
Ed Tom Bell's monologue about his dreams in the end, it's taken from the novel too. In an interview with Oprah, Cormac McCarthy explained his view on the human subconscious, saying,
"But it understands language because it understands the problems that you're working on, and then when you're sleeping, it will work on them for you."
So in ending with these dreams, the Coens endorse McCarthy's view that our subconscious can synthesize our problems on a deeper level. But Sheriff Bell's dreams show us that not all problems can be solved by our inner selves. Sometimes, the subconscious tells you what you truly want, but it's a wish that's impossible to fulfill.